Hello, I'm Henk, Special Envoy for International Water Affairs for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It's a great opportunity to talk to you from Israel on the issue of water, of course. If you see the image of the blue planet, the marble image that was taken in 1972, you see the world is covered with water. Doesn't say that everything's water, but water is life, like former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon used to say. And we learned this again through this pandemic, the COVID pandemic, where water, hygiene and sanitation are a first line of defense, but for billions of people that lack that access, that are still very vulnerable in the context of this pandemic. But it's not only health. Climate hits us through water, with floods, droughts and wildfires all over the world. 2018, 19, 20 and last year. Record floods, record heat waves, record droughts every year over and over again. And also in Israel you face challenges of water quality in your rivers and stream, but also because often rivers have become canals or little streams that are captivated in your urban core. They flood when there's too much rain, or they dry up when there's not enough. And with an intensification and speed up of urbanization, those natural flows are only more imposed by human interventions and human investment. So we have to figure out how to do this. And as we've learned in the past, this cannot be done with a single focused engineering approach. There's no Houston, we have a problem, there is one solution. And definitely not by white male 50 plus, like these guys in the room. No, this has to come through a collective, collaborative effort from the ground up as well as from the top down. This has to be everything and everyone at the same time. And it's like Secretary General Guterres said, a time for science to understand what the challenges really are by facts and solidarity, to do this together with accountable government, but also partnerships in every community, but also internationally. Let's start with understand. IPCC reports keep repeating themselves by saying how important and how challenging this climate change is for our society and the world. But I want to highlight the Climate Change and Land report from 2019. It makes very clear that almost every investment we do is increasing climate change, while at the same time the way how we invest is increasing our vulnerability. And this is exactly also part of the solution. If we invest differently, in a different way, more in line with nature, and understand better the opportunities that water and nature bring, then we can also reduce the changing climate. Mitigation and adaptation go hand in hand. And the latest IPCC report that just came out in March of this year shows again that adaptation and water are key issues when it comes to building resiliency and sustainability for the future ahead. Now, when we look at floods and droughts across the world, it's the cities that are actually the hotspots where everything comes together. OECD and World Bank estimated that in cities, those floods will cause trillions of damage across the years. And to prevent that is actually our best opportunity. But it's not only floods, it's also water quality that comes with that. That is a threat to humanity and to our nature. Building with nature, understanding nature's capacity is also really about taking care of that water. So water and health and biodiversity and resiliency and mitigation are all closely connected. And that means that we have to look at the future in a different way. Not by replicating past mistakes. Those past mistakes, the infrastructure of the past, single-focused, looking at complex problems in a very siloed way, actually make us more vulnerable until this day and years to come. So we really have to change course. Figure out how the infrastructure of the past is actually not the best example for the future. And we have a comprehensive agenda for that. Sustainable Development Goals, 17 in total, as a whole comprehensive holistic agenda help us to tell what to do best and next. And with the Paris Agreement now again amplified in Glasgow with the Glasgow Climate Pact, we understand better that 1.5 degrees is still in reach if only we start to do things differently. And that means that the business as usual, as we knew, is not only not enough, it's lethal with all those climate disasters happening across the world. And that means reversing course, changing almost everything. Not continuing on our non-responsive way by building infrastructure of the past as replicating mistakes. Also, don't wait for the disasters to happen and be reactive. At best, build a bit better. No, this is really about a new approach. A proactive approach that is really focusing to the future and not to the past. Don't use the disaster as a way to continue to look back. No, use it as a way to turn around, look at that future, and grasp those opportunities across those sustainable development goals, across social, economic, cultural, and environmental challenges and opportunity, and build holistic, comprehensive approaches. Now, I'm Special Envoy for International Water Affairs, and therefore water is seen through my eyes as the mechanism, the catalyst to build those sustainable and resilient solutions. It is like a leverage, a way to help us catalyze towards a future that is more sustainable, more equitable, more inclusive, and more resilient. And that means that by integration and inclusion and sustainability, I mean we have to look at the long term in a very comprehensive way. Connecting the dots across all sectors and silos in society, but also across vested interest, bypassing them in this very holistic, future-proof approach. But only looking at the future is not enough. That will make a plan that might be abstract, a book on a shelf. No, it is about the future now, implementing projects on the ground now, that are innovative, that are catalytic, that help us continue to look at that future. And we can only connect that long-term approach with the short-term intervention if we work inclusively, if we build coalitions and partnerships from the ground up in our communities, all the way to our river streams, along our coast, across borders, across continents. And this is also where the Netherlands and Israel can work together, figuring out how these type of coalitions can spark innovative approaches that build that resilient future based on the understanding of those challenges. If we do this transparent and accountable, we learn, we build capacity. We build capacity in our communities with that awareness, but also capacity in our institutions. So we become better in being proactive and looking at that future. And of course, we need inspiration. This cannot only come by facts and data and reports. This has to come by inspiration that tells us that, or inspires us that what needs to be done, these wicked challenges, also can be done. And for that we need design and planning and innovation. Because we need the solutions, we have to be practical, that are both also innovative and catalytic. We also need solutions that have the capacity to connect, to look across scales, to look across interest, from your backyard all the way to your river basin, from your neighbor to your business and government, and the capacity to connect across time. Looking back, learning from history, but also definitely looking ahead. And this capacity to connect, to integrate these challenges and the opportunity to implement them now, to be pragmatic and catalytic, also sparks a political societal debate. It inspires, but also is aspirational. And that level of ambition is what we need to leapfrog towards that future. Now, I'm from the Netherlands, low-lying country, used to be a very wet place, as you see in the image, as I showed here, a woodcut from the 17th century. And on the right, you see a slide where everything that's dark or light blue is, vulnerable for flooding. So we're almost a third below sea level, but 2/3 prone to flooding. And that delta, where rivers enter the sea, became a place of innovation. Really looking at water differently. Not seeing it as a threat, not seeing it as an enemy, but as an opportunity to build land. Agriculture, economy, cities, of course, where water was a core asset for the quality of life. And we not only did this by engineering and design, no, we did this by partnerships and in partnership. Building local coalitions, water authorities, as we call them, already 900 years ago, and around those authorities building a democracy, a water democracy. And until this day, those water authorities are still the fourth layer in our constitution, in our democracy, that take care of water quality and water safety. And of course, we had our disasters over the ages with floods, but also droughts that made us stronger and understand better that prevention pays, and looking at that future is the best strategy to build resiliency and sustainability. To look at water quality in a very innovative way, but also use nature for that water quality to create recreational spaces where nature is your friend and actually helps us clean the water. In '53, with our massive flood, where almost 2,000 people died, we started to build first with infrastructure and then rethought that infrastructure in a more natural way, making sure that there was always room for the water on the coast, in our rivers, and in our rivers and lakes, as well as in our cities. And along the coast, by assessment, we have to rethink everything we do to build safety, water safety against, of course, floods and storms, but also sea level rise. And that always comes again in a very comprehensive way. This is the sand engine or sand motor close to The Hague, where we build an island in front of the coast. And because of the current in the sea, the sand is dispersed along the coast, and we don't have to dredge, and we don't have to replenish the beach. It is nature that is actually protecting. And a little bit up north in Katwijk, we had to reinforce the dune system. And the engineer said we need a dike in the dune. But we also need, for recreational use and the economy of Katwijk, a parking garage. So we turned the dike into a parking garage. And now this amazing public space attracts tourists, creates a healthy space, and is, of course, an asset for the safety of Katwijk. 1916 storm helped us create the Afsluitdijk, the dike that closed off the sea and turned it into a lake. But at the same time, such a dike poses us with challenges when we look at biodiversity and the quality of water. So right now we make a hole in the dike. Yes, the Dutch do that to actually build the largest fish migration river you will actually be able to see from the moon. And in 1995, with the almost floods in our riverine system, we had to evacuate 250,000 people. And it was a stark reminder that our rivers are actually the arteries of our society. We have to look at rivers differently. They're not canals for industrial and economic use. No, they're living environments. Environments that need the space to grow when there's too much water and to shrink when there's not enough. To ensure that that quality of space and quality of water secures our health, but also our resilient future. And we built this program called Room for the River, literally making room for the river and living with that water instead of fighting against it. In our landscape and rural environments, creating that room, but also close to our cities. By here in Nijmegen, building a bypass, a second river, you could say, that floods when there's too much water, and actually is an amazing public space for recreational use, theater, and more. And close to Rotterdam, we turned a European rowing facility into a flood prevention measure. This is stormwater capturing in times of need and crisis. It can hold 4 million cubic of water when there is too much water. But on a normal day, we can row, and in the winter, we can skate. And in our cities, we open up our streets to capture the water, to bring it back in squares, to make sure that the sewage overflow is not impacted by these floods. So we institutionalized our adaptation and resiliency approach in a Delta program. A program that looks at response strategy when things go wrong, planning in a very comprehensive way, and of course the protections with dams, dikes, levees, dunes in a nature-based way. And that informed our adaptation strategy as well as our national determined contribution in the context of the Paris Agreement. This demands, this approach is a collective and collaborative approach. But we do this also across the world. We have the International Water Ambition, where I'm a proud ambassador of. We work across the world on water safety and water quality and water finance. We set up coalitions of countries to inspire and to learn from. A high-level panel that helps us raise awareness on the issues of water. And organize the first adaptation summit last year to put adaptation high on the agenda and work as a solution broker for the countries, the regions and the societies at risk. And at the latest COP in Glasgow, we organized, together with many, many partners, the first water pavilion at the heart of the climate conference. Bringing that water narrative to the multilateral level, it is an honor that the Netherlands and Tajikistan are the co-host for the first since 1977, the second ever UN conference on water. And water is life, as former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon used to say. It's connected to everything and helps us inform, build a sustainable future for all. Now, that doesn't mean that we are way behind, that disasters don't happen. And I had the honor to work for the Obama administration post-Hurricane Sandy. Sandy was a massive event. It hit the New York region in October 29, 2012, almost 10 years ago. And this was the result: crippled infrastructure, communities at risk, and a city devastated by such a disaster. But it also meant an opportunity. We learned from Sandy immediately. The Obama administration set up the Hurricane Sandy Rebuilding Task Force, and I served as one of its advisors to work on innovation and future orientation. I set up a challenge called Rebuild by Design, a challenge that benefits of prices, as McKinsey and the Office of Science and Technology Policy already told us. With an ambitious goal, we could reach beyond the usual suspect and bring out of discipline perspectives. We could learn from those challenges to provoke innovative solutions. Rebuild by Design was a sidestep out of the locking you often feel in these situations, where you want to build back, but also need to repair. It often only leads to band-aid approaches, layers of band-aids that don't build resiliency and sustainability. Here we turned it around. We literally created a safe space to invite experts from across the world to work with the experts of the regions, across coalitions with over 500 communities and neighborhoods and government organizations and NGOs and academia and beyond. Hundreds of organizations, thousands of people worked together on solutions that really mattered in building resiliency for the region. We had 10 teams working across the region on these innovative concepts. One focusing on the swamp in the Meadowlands, really building back nature to be able to be the sponge that we so much need, but also a healthy environment for the neighborhoods across. On Long Island, we organized a room for the river, a mini room for the river program, where all these perpendicular rivers on Long Island now hold the water and actually build resiliency and sustainability. And the Big U around Manhattan is actually going block by block, community by community, figuring out what infrastructure not only benefits flood resiliency, but also the resiliency and sustainability of the neighborhoods behind. In Hoboken, we created a comprehensive strategy that not only resists the flood, it also delays it with greening the urban fabric, stores it in new parks and flood prevention measures, and discharges it back to the Hudson River. And Hunts Point's food market, the market where New York is dependent on, through a layered approach of intervention, now becomes more resilient. And off the coast of Staten Island, by working with eco-reefs, building a resilient new reef that not only creates a safe environment to swim again, but it protects the coastline of Staten Island for any impact of any storm, as well as such a superstorm like Sandy. We selected 6 designs to move ahead, and we're implementing them now. $1 billion for the first and another $1 billion for the last. Scaling up that challenge across the US with the National Disaster Resiliency Competition provoked an understanding that we should not only respond in the context of disasters, we should prevent those disasters from happening. And prevention pays, as the Global Commission on Adaptation tells us. It is also what the IPCC report that was presented this month also tells us. Prevent the disaster. It not only saves lives and losses, it actually creates added value. And this understanding that by innovation we can build a better future informed Resilient by Design in the Bay Area and San Francisco, but also the program I set up in Asia called Water as Leverage. Again, using water as the catalyst to build resiliency for our communities across the world. An assessment, understand first, of where the hotspots of the interlinkages between all those water challenges come together. We selected 3 cities in the region: Khulna in Bangladesh, Semarang in Indonesia, and Chennai in India, where we turned project development upside down, creating again a safe space where communities, governments and investors could come together. a space on the streets where those conversations sparked innovative concept moving ahead. 6 teams helped us move ahead. I explain one, and that's from Chennai. Chennai's water system is actually broke. All the water flows through the infrastructure that's out there to the sea. It's polluted. The aquifer is polluted and depleted, and with every storm, more water just crawls through the street. But if we turn it around and working with nature, we can turn that city again in a resilient water community. Not having the water pollution that's out there now in the canals, but looking at flood prevention, drought prevention, sanitation, and a healthy urban environment, building back tanks, restoring the old ones and the swamps, building bioswales, focusing on waste and recycle, and building buildings that are actually sustainable. Then we can spark again those historic tanks to become the places where we hold the water and bring it back in the aquifer. And with that type of infrastructure, from the bottom up, it's not only about water safety, it's about a healthy environment, healthy economy, and building resiliency towards that future. We started to build on the small scale with a school in Chennai, and we're scaling it up across Chennai, across Tamil Nadu, and across Asia. And in Semarang, we focused on the rivers. Making more room for the rivers. In Semarang, actually, those rivers were, like in so many places across the world, became canals. Bringing back that water capacity not only prevents the flood, it also gives the opportunity to bring that water back to the community. And in Khulna, in Bangladesh, we look at all the layers of those intersections between river and urban development. Water as leverage got a prize, but more importantly, it might be the opportunity for the Netherlands and Israel to work together on the water challenges, really using water as a catalyst for our collaboration, of course, but also to bring back room for the rivers and a healthy environment. It's never enough. We have to continue to scale up and replicate everything we do. We have to make sure that the innovations that are now still a small part of our budget, of our investment, actually become the mainstream and the core of what we do to build resiliency for the future. It is a necessity for the people around the world that face too much water, too little water, and the water that is actually impacting their health. We have to step up our effort, as Secretary General Guterres said. I wrote a book on my adventures in the United States, and the message is, this climate challenge is too big to ignore, but it's also our best opportunity to work together on comprehensive solutions informed by design that are innovative, and we can do it if we only act now. We can change course now if we do this together. I look forward to that partnership, and I wish you a great conference.